What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is an experienced educator who has taught at schools all over the world. He's an advisor and founding member of TAMS Incubator, the Travel and Meeting Society Group. He's a chaired professor and associate dean at New York University's Jonathan M. Tisch Center of Hospitality. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas Graf. Welcome, Nicolas.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I would like to share with our listeners that I've seen you in the LinkedIn sphere every year, sometime around May, June, promoting the NYU Lodging Conference. But we actually never met until we're both on the advisory board for the Radical Innovation event that happens in October. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad to finally meet you virtually. And then I wanted to just talk to you and share your story with everyone else about your experience being a professor of hospitality and also chairing this, or I guess being involved in the transition of the NYU Lodging Conference and shepherding its growth into what's next. And I'd love to get into what's next. And it's just so nice. And I think one of the greatest things about doing this podcast is I get to meet all these people who are tangential to my world in hospitality. But what I've learned is as I expand the view and get to meet all these people and get to know people like yourself on a more personal level, it makes this already small industry that much smaller and so much more relational, which it always was too. So it's like almost like pouring gasoline on all of my relationships within our industry and being able to share you with others. So I just want to say thank you very much for being there and putting yourself out there.
Of course, no, it's a pleasure meeting you too, and I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah. Before we get into the conversation, obviously hospitality plays a very important role in your life. I guess, firstly, what does hospitality mean to you? And then give us a little bit of your history about how you became a professor of hospitality.
I think, hospitality is really about two things. It's about making people feel better and making people be better. So when you think about hospitality and travel, it's about going to new places, meeting people, meeting new cultures. That's about, both feeling better and being better. The more you know about the world around you, the better person you are, I believe. And how did I get to where I am? It's a long story. It's a long journey. I'm going to try to make it shorter today, but I'm a high school dropout from Switzerland. Early on in my life, I was not willing to take orders very easily. So I always wanted to do it my way. So I dropped out of high school, decided to do what I liked, which was cooking. So I went and did a chef apprenticeship in Switzerland. And then towards the end, the chef who was the owner of the business had a divorce, and he didn't want to give anything to his wife, and it was an ugly divorce. So he took the business down and went bankrupt. And so I kind of thought, maybe I need to learn how to run a business too. So I was able to go to a hotel school in Switzerland, even though I was a high school dropout. There are ways and pathways that are built in the higher education system in Switzerland that allowed me to go to EHL, the Lausanne Hotel School. And I graduated best in class. Somehow, I woke up, my brain started to work better. And so I finished best student. And the school offered me to do an MBA part-time for free, but I had to become a teaching assistant. And, I figured, a free MBA doesn't come along every day. So I said, why not? And I did the MBA, and and that was fun. And I started to teach, which was also quite fun. And I met a faculty member who was visiting from the US, and he said, "Hey, why don't you do a PhD?" And I kind of said, "I'm not sure what a PhD is, but if it's with you." The guy was inspiring. He knew so much about the hotel industry. He knew everybody in the business. And I said, "Okay, I'm Michael Olson, out of Virginia Tech in Blacksburg." And so I decided to go, and ended up in Blacksburg. And fun story is, I remember I the day I moved to the US, my flight was diverted to Minneapolis because there was a blackout on the East Coast, and I was supposed to land in Washington Dulles Airport, and so I ended up in Minneapolis for the night, and flew back to DC the following day, and went to the car rental company, and I had rented the cheapest car, right, for a week. And they said, "But you were supposed to come yesterday." And I said, "Look, all of the flights were diverted to somewhere else, so you should have known." And they said, "Well, we have only one car left," and it was a yellow Mustang. And that's why
The American dream.
the American dream. And so I saw myself driving down, I think it's I-95, and heading to Blacksburg, Virginia, and going up and down the hills, and ended up there. And then the rest is history. And then I went on to teach at the University of Houston, then decided to move back to Europe, taught at Essex Business School in Paris, and which had a program in hospitality, originally a joint venture with Cornell University, the hotel school. And then I moved back to Switzerland, which was a mistake, but we all make mistakes. And then was hired by NYU, and here I am. I've been here for about almost 8 years.
Wow. Okay, so that's a very interesting path, because most of the time, well, I don't even want to qualify, but most of the time, as that business was imploding, where you were an assistant chef, or I don't know if you were assistant chef or just working in the kitchen. At that point, without a high school diploma, and the business is tanking, I would think most people would be thinking about how they're going to make money next, right? To survive, and like, what am I going to do? And it's a very interesting pivot to go from there, and also reassuring and inspiring that you could go from that place to going into academia, and then actually, from the sounds of it, just staying in academia from that. And it was almost, I don't think you could have planned that.
No, I think first of all, I've been lucky to be in Switzerland, where the system was, designed to allow for different pathways. And secondly, I just, every time an opportunity opened, I just said yes, and I took the risk. I took the chance. And I think, when my students ask me for advice, I say, in life, I believe you have to say yes more often than you say no, because I think the world is full of opportunities. Every place I've lived, and my wife and I counted the other day, we've moved over 20 times in our life, and so it makes you focus on what matters to you, because you can't move everything around, and it makes you realize that there are so many nice places on earth, and so many different communities that you can thrive in, whether it was in Houston, Texas, Blacksburg, Virginia, Paris. Then I lived in Normandy in France. I lived in the mountains in Switzerland, and now here in New York. There are great places. I mean, I loved living in the city in Manhattan. We've moved out to New Jersey. Now I have a little house in the Poconos. Every time you say yes, you discover something new. And I think that's what I meant, when we talked about hospitality and travel in general. It's getting somewhere new and meeting new people, discovering new things. I think it just makes you a better person and makes you happier. And so that's what I did. I said yes, when Mike Olson said, "You want to do a PhD?" And I really had no idea what it was. Frankly speaking, I had never viewed myself as potentially becoming a professor. Nobody in my family has ever been a professor. My My brother and I are our first, generation in, college educated in the family. So talk to my aunt today, and she would still think I'm a chef, which is totally fine. I still cook most of the days.
Um, One of the things that I find incredible about hospitality, and also you working at NYU, which is one of the more expensive universities in the United States or the world, probably, right? Hospitality, you can work in the trenches and get that view. You can go the school route, whether NYU, Virginia Tech, Penn State, Cornell. I mean, I can't even name. There's scores of them, hospitality schools. But it also offers, or it affords an opportunity for kids who don't want to take that debt load on to kind of go work in the entry level positions in the hotel space or even F&B space. But I find in the hotel space, you still hear so many of those stories of someone who worked as a bell person or a front desk person or a housekeeper, and then they go up into middle management. And I find, and you can probably speak to it more eloquently than I can, but just as a fan of hospitality, observing this, I find that the career curve is incredibly steep within our industry. If you get in there, and to not be saddled with college debt also seems like a pretty awesome option for young people out there.
Absolutely. And, we've been trying at NYU to do two things. We have our traditional bachelor degree, 4 year, it's a 4 year program. It's expensive. It's really expensive, as you said. Now, the university president 2 years ago announced that every financial need would be met for every undergraduate student. So if your family earns less than $100,000, then your tuition will be covered.
I just want to stop you there because I want to talk about that. But I also think maybe, I don't know when it was, 5 or 8 years ago. I don't remember his name. The guy who founded Home Depot, Langone. Oh, because the NYU Langone Medical. He said all medical students are going to get paid or have their tuition taken care of, regardless of need, I believe. So I didn't realize that that is also happening for undergrads as well. And now Harvard, which is basically like a hedge fund that teaches a couple classes. They're actually, if you're means need or means based, if your family makes less than $200,000, tuition is taken care of. So this is actually a really cool trend, and I didn't realize that NYU was doing that as well. So I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to contextualize it for everyone.
No, I think everybody knows about the debt problem, student debt issue in this country, and the Biden administration tried to find a sort of solution. Now it's not a great solution. You can't just let people with debt and cancel the debt. You just can't do that in a way. It's not sustainable. I mean, it's a one-off, but it cannot be sustainable. So universities have to find other alternatives, and I think they have two. One is fundraising and trying to build an endowment that supports need-based. And the second one is developing new pathways, which is something we just announced about a month and a half, 2 months ago. We're launching a new associate degree that is allowing for us awarding credit for work-based experiences. We're partnering with two groups. We're partnering with the HNLA Foundation. They have an apprenticeship program. They have about 2,200 apprentices at the moment in there. They're working professionals, and the apprenticeship model is a competency-based model. So, in other words, the apprentice works, and once they can demonstrate that they have acquired some competencies, then they move on to new competencies. And so we've mapped their curriculum without curriculum, and we'll be able to award a minimum of 18 credits for their apprenticeship. And these credits are free of charge because we award them. So the person works, they get paid for the work they do, they acquire the competency, we recognize them as part of our courses, learning outcomes, and we award credit for free. So that's one thing for current existing professionals. But we're also trying to partner now with the National Academy Foundation, which has a hospitality, travel, and tourism academy with 36,000 kids, high school kids. And what we're trying to do is to offer them a cheaper pathway to acquire or to get an associate degree. Associate degrees are 60 credits. And through them, we will be able and willing to offer them up to 30 credits for work-based experience. So that's half of the tuition is taken care of. And the remaining 30 credits are highly discounted too. So I think we're really trying hard to provide different pathways. Now, the other thing that I find extremely interesting and that associate degree is supported by the J. Willard and Alice S. Marriott Family Foundation. They support us financially. But what I found extremely interesting, I was at the University of Utah about a week and a half ago, where the foundation announced a major gift to the university, where they're going to create the Bill Marriott Institute of Hospitality. But instead of having degree granting programs in hospitality, they're going to teach hospitality to every school at the University of Utah. Every student.
And that's what I was talking to you about before I hit record, letting you know who the audience is and all this. And this is what I say to almost everyone: is people designing, owning, operating, and brands of hotels and resorts globally. But also, there's been this weird, kind of cool growth of audience that's entrepreneurs, because I think, and this is my theory, that hospitality touches everything and makes everything better. And if you think about it in a business, just how you meet others and meet others where they are and hear and kind of set vision and strategy and growth. That's amazing. I had no idea about that. So tell us more about that.
I think it's the future of hospitality education. I mean, I think, whether you're going to a business school or an engineering school or law school, I would, the more I talk to hotel groups, they say, well, we're interested in your hospitality students, but we also need engineers. We also need, architects, designers. We need lawyers. We need accountants. In some places, they even need medical doctors.
They probably need it more than most of the other ones.
That's right. And so they want these people to know that, number one, that they have career path for them in the hotel industry. And number two, they want them to have a mindset that's hospitality mindset, placing customers and associates first, because they are the ones delivering the service. And I think it's really interesting the way that and the Marriott Foundation has been doing that already with the gift they made to Howard University, where they created the Marriott Samuelsson Center for Hospitality Leadership. Again, they don't have the Marriott scholars at Howard. They don't major in hospitality. They major in different things, but they have the Marriott scholars, so that they have interactions with executives in the business, and they can see that they have different careers in such a rich industry.
I have to share, like, one of the cool things about doing this podcast is, I get to talk to a lot of people and hear their story. And one of the coolest outcomes of doing this, and unplanned and just surprise, is I get invited to different things now than I normally do. Is just like providing furniture for hotels, or I get to speak at events like at Radical Innovation. I'm emceeing that event. It's such an incredible event that fosters innovation. But I got invited to that ribbon cutting at the Marriott Sorensen school at Howard, and I was just blown away. Those kids are freaking amazing. Everyone in that room was so great, and I did appreciate, although I think as a layman and not really understanding, I feel like even though all those students at Howard are studying different disciplines, but then there's a thread of hospitality that I think ultimately all of them want to get into hospitality. If what I'm hearing you say about University of Utah, which is different, and that's exciting and awesome because they're all bringing different sensibilities and perspectives. But at University of Utah, what sounds cool is like, it's not necessarily to bend people back to hospitality. It's to take the best practices of hospitality and then go on into their lot and march forward into their careers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow, that's super. And then what's also interesting in talking to a lot of these, many of my past guests who work at interior designers, let's say, that work at really large global architectural firms, if they're kicking off a new commercial project or an industrial project or I don't know, some other commercial that's not necessarily hospitality or aviation, they actually at the kickoff of the meeting, when they want to get all their ideas, they'll bring the hospitality person in, so that it's almost like the hospitality lens or filter, because ultimately that's about that gathering and bringing together of people.
Yeah, and major office buildings today are running hospitality operations. It's we have a relationship with Pyramid Hospitality Group, and they're running a number of hospitality functions, for Fortune 500 companies for their office space, their meetings, and as that, there is still that movement towards back in the office a little more. The hospitality component is becoming increasingly important in terms of ensuring that employees are connected, ensuring that employees develop a sense of belonging within the organization, and ultimately be more productive and efficient as they meet and gather and do the work. So I believe hospitality is everywhere. I mean, look, you talked about NYU Langone. At the moment, Langone has hired the Ritz Carlton company, their consulting unit, to help them improve their hospitality, the whole experience within the hospital system. And hospitals, as today they're competing for reviews. They're not competing for referrals anymore. The referral system is gone. People check hospital reputations online very much like they started to do 25 years ago for the hospitality industry. And so that transition to competition on service as opposed to competition on, I'm the best surgeon. Yeah, that's fine, but I expect the surgery to be successful 100% of the time. So it's not that you're expecting as a patient. You're expecting to be treated well, to feel well in the hospital, and to get back home as quickly as possible. And so the hospitality component of hospitals, of, dentists, anything that has to do with caring for a patient or a customer, that's becoming increasingly important everywhere across the board.
It also goes into a lot of these business books. An entrepreneur, I call them my business porn behind me. I've read them all, but so much of them, and actually Danny Meyer in, I think, Setting the Table, which is like such a seminal book for what we all do. But so many of them say culture is the most important thing: building for culture, establishing values, coaching, mentoring, and ultimately hire for culture, whatever the culture of that company or entity is. And it's different everywhere because it's all defined from what specifically they do. Hire for culture, and if the skills are almost there, you can always teach the skills, but hiring for culture is the most important thing. As you look back on your journey, and actually as a professor, and like having a better understanding of the long-term trajectory of hospitality, do you think that this breakthrough at, like, for example, that what's going on at University of Utah is all about taking that I don't know, I feel like there's been some kind of a seismic shift that recently, this idea of culture or corporate culture, or um, somehow is best distilled and learned from through the lens of hospitality. Like, has there been something or a bunch of things that have happened recently that you might be able to put your finger on as far as a pathway for hospitality to teach everyone else?
I think it's seminal article was written back in the I think it was the mid or the late 90s, which was called Welcome to the Experience Economy. And Spine and Gilmore wrote that article, and it was really about talking about what people were consuming today, and they were pioneers because they saw that coming before we knew it was really happening. And now we're really into it. Nobody's just buying a commodity, right?
And I'm sorry, it's Pine and who? I've never heard of that article, and I probably should read that. So,
Pine and Gilmore.
okay, I'm gonna track that down. Okay, great. Keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, totally. But I think when people go to a restaurant or even a store, I mean, when you look at what people, you have the all right, I need to buy socks. Okay, that's fine. Buying socks is something you may not necessarily want the experience there. But even then, if you prefer to go to a Macy's as opposed to X, Y, and Z, it might be because of the way the whole store is designed. Things you can see, and I was in Hong Kong back in 2019. I was in Hong Kong, and I had the pleasure of meeting the Adrian and Sonia Cheng from the Cheng family in Hong Kong, and they own Rosewood Hotels there. And I was talking to them, and they had just opened the in the by the river, the harbor. I can't remember the name of that. It's a mixed-use development, has a huge retail space. And Adrian was telling me about he created an art collection, and he wanted to infuse art into the retail experience, and he wanted that retail experience. So he had performance art, paintings, sculpture, etc., in the shopping mall, and he wanted to create that for two reasons. One was like part of their value system and all that. He wanted to teach the kids about arts and culture. So that was one thing. And where do kids go on weekends? They go in the shopping mall. And the second one was really to create that all-rounded experience so that people would come to the shopping mall and not only enjoy buying something, but just enjoy being there. And so that was incredible. And the second thing I visited then with Sonia Cheng was the Rosewood. At the time was really new. And the way it's designed and the way people, so you're talking about culture, but their employees there, they go every day, they clocking in the morning, and they can choose from about 10 to 15 different designer clothes as a uniform. So they don't have the same uniform every day. They can dress the way they feel that day. So it's they cannot wear anything, but they have like 15 choices of designer brands that they can choose from every day. And the second thing that I thought that was, so that's about creating that culture. I'm not a servant, just like, I'm someone that is stylish, and I can afford to be stylish because I don't have to buy it, but I wear this, it makes me think back to the Ritz Carlton, with gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And that's what they're really trying to do. The other piece was from a design standpoint. So I was going through the floors of that building, and I noticed the size of the corridors between the doors. And I asked her, I said, wow, I've never seen corridors that huge. I mean, think about it. So you have one door, one bedroom, a bedroom, and in between, it's like 25 feet. And in the middle, you have like a collection of books. It's like a library on every floor. And you have some people that have some of the employees that have coming with little, drinks and snacks, and they just go through the floors. And so they wanted to create on each floor an experience. So people don't have to stay in their rooms. They can just go on the floor. They don't have to go in the lobby. They can stay on the floor and just read a book and experience the luxury of Rosewood. I thought, how do they try to create that experience? So we're really in that experience economy. The way people travel today, people want a genuine travel experience. When you think about hotel brands in the 80s, remember, a Hilton room had to be the same around the world so that travelers had that sense of safety. That was really about trying to ensure safety. Now, nobody wants the same room. When you travel to Brazil, you want to have a local experience. When you travel to Italy, you want to have a local travel experience, and you want the design of the room to represent that. So we are really now in the experience economy everywhere we are. Think about an Apple store. The Apple store is all about the experience, right? You buy online, but it's all about the experience. And that's everywhere now, I believe. Now you think about banking at, what is it, that bank that has a coffee shop inside? Capital Bank, Capital One, I think.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, Capital One, they so you don't go banking, you go for a coffee and you happen to bank.
Oh, wow.
It's very different.
Just the other day, actually, it's funny you brought up at the Apple store. I just recently recorded with a pair of gentlemen, and we were talking. I was trying to get at like what the future, like, what is there any kind of radical change that they're seeing in the F&B space because they're more F&B focused. And then I brought up this idea of Apple, how I remember in the, I don't know, 2008, 7, 6, somewhere in there, I read an article in Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, and it was talking about just retail leaders. So it had like Tiffany's was at the top, and then I don't know, they had like 6 or 8 others, and Tiffany's metric was sales per square foot, I think, and it was, let's say it was $700. I don't know if that's a month, a day, a year, or whatever. And then everyone else under, like, of the top 10 was from $700 to like $200 a square foot. And then Apple came out of nowhere, not knowing anything about retail, zero, and they were like $1,500 or $2,000 a square foot. Are you seeing anything out there that's just a revolutionary new take on it, or are they, or is it just like more of a slow evolution to, and that fully embraces this experience economy?
It's a slow evolution. I think some people, I've seen some people try more radical stuff. I mean, I remember I was in Tel Aviv. Oh my God, that's a long time ago. That's probably 15 years ago. And there was a restaurant who tried to just sell the experience without the food. So you had to come in the restaurant. They just wanted to be a social gathering. So they were only serving drinks, but you would have to buy an imaginary steak. So they would bring you the plate, but the plate would be empty, and they would charge you for a steak. And they thought it was so pushy. They said, but you're not here for the food, really. You're really here for the experience, for seeing and being seen. And I was like, guys, you're crazy. So they went bankrupt within 3 months. The other one that I thought was interesting, it also didn't work. But so the menu pricing was kind of moving like the stock market. So it was a supply and demand pricing, and people would say, okay, all right, I'm buying this now, and the price would go up. So you could sell your steak before it was served and make money out of it because someone else bid a higher price than you did. So you could still, you see what I mean? So you would say, all right, I'm spending $15 on the Caesar salad right now. Now, you know it's going to take 10 minutes to be served. So during the 10 minutes, the value of that Caesar salad would increase or decrease. And you can sell it to make a profit. And someone else would eat the Caesar salad that you ordered. And so that didn't work either. I think they lasted maybe 6 months. So anything that's too radical, I think they have their head in the right place. But I think people, it's a gradual evolution. But we're getting there. You know, we had the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Line before the pandemic. He came to talk to our students, and one of the things he said was, you know, we asked him what's the best size for a ship, and he said the bigger the better. And we asked him why. He said, well, the bigger the ship, the more entertainment I can put on board, and people come for the entertainment. And they come for the experience. They don't come for just lying out on the deck and watching the sea. I mean, very few people do that. When you look at how ships are built, cruise line, I mean, you don't have enough space outside. I mean, you may have enough space outside for 30% of the passengers. Most people stay inside and enjoy the cruise. I mean, think about it. Why go on a cruise? Well, because it has everything. It has a casino, has a theater, has entertainment for the kids, and so forth and so forth.
And I think that the cruise ship is a great example of there's an experience for everyone. I've been on a cruise once, and it was cool, but it's not my cup of tea. But some people are just diehard cruisers. I would rather be on a bareboat, sailboat with my family, cruising from point A to point B, and then cooking our own food, and then my kids can put on a show that hopefully doesn't annoy me. But it's a small confined ship.
It's interesting what you're saying, because everybody's seeking different experiences. And so the challenge now for businesses, and when you think about, Marriott announced last week the acquisition of Citizen M. And Citizen M is a very interesting concept. And it's different from any of the brand that Marriott has, but that probably brings Marriott brands portfolio to what, 30?
It must be 6 or 7 or 8 or something. It's almost 40, I would think.
Yeah. And every year at the hotel investment conference, you know, the CEOs, every year, I think someone asks the question, how many brands is too many? And every year they keep repeating, they say, it's never too many, because we want to be able to meet the customer where they are. And people, same customer, may want 10 different experiences during the same year, whether on business or on leisure, they want a different experience, and we want to be able to meet them where they want to be, and keep them within our loyalty program. That's really what it's all about.
And thank you for bringing up Citizen M, because I do appreciate that product that Citizen M brought to market. I think that that was radically different than most everything I'd seen before, in that it's a tenantless check-in, right? And then the room actually reminds me of a cruise ship, and I think that's why I didn't actually like it very much. But it is actually really cool and compact. Like, the bed is at the end. You walk in, the bed is there in the window. They developed this new bed so that it can lift up, and it makes it easier for the housekeepers to make the bed so they don't have to climb over there. But they wanted everything to be in one line and almost modular built. And it was cool because they built the wet area of the room with one factory, and then all the other FF&E with other factories. And they were trying to find someone, I don't know if they did, because it wasn't really my cup of tea, but that could make the entire thing as one encapsulated room that could then slot in. And then it's one purchase order, just one thing to manage, one point of accountability and liability. But it wasn't for me, but I really appreciated how they were actually really looking at things much differently. And I totally appreciate that. As far as, and again, that echoes with what everyone is saying, or most of the guests, almost all the guests. It's about meeting others where they're at, right? And making that space and time, and just taking that pause for what's important to that other person. It's putting others first. I want to go back to that idea. I love how you brought up these different pathways, right? And you said something that I want to get to, but it was that you made a mistake going back to Switzerland. So I want to dig into that one. But we go to Europe as a family because we have family out in Austria. And I remember over the years, I started a business in high school. I've started a couple of businesses in my career, through, like, as a grown up. And I remember, sitting at family dinners or whatever. And most of the family members were like, wow, how do you do that? Like, it's so interesting that you can just start it, where in Austria, and I think Europe at large, you have to have like a certificate, and you have to be studying in a certain way. And everyone is not everyone, most people are in this mindset that they have to be going down this path to be something. But I found that your path seems very different, in the sense that you didn't graduate high school. You started working in a kitchen. It's almost like kind of American in a way, in that you're like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'll go to school and I'll try this other thing. So your pathway was very different from a typical European path. So that's my observation, number one. So please prove me wrong or not. And then, does that tie into why you think it was a mistake to go back to Switzerland, or what was the mistake all about?
So I think you're right in a sense that the workforce development system, if you want, in Europe is, whether it's Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France to a degree, not too sure about Spain or Italy to a degree as well, is designed around occupations. And in Switzerland, and Switzerland is always within the top 5 when at any kind of ranking, like, competitiveness ranking, GDP per capita ranking. So it's a country that's doing and has done well, but only 20% of the population has a college degree in Switzerland. The rest have an apprenticeship, which is certified by the government. And so you go through that apprenticeship to learn a trade. And whether it's IT system analyst or something, or whether it's an engineer, you don't necessarily have to go to college. You can do that via work-based models. But what it does, it tends to limit you to that occupation and that trade. You see, when you're in the US, you tend to have an occupation, an education that's more, generic. I mean, when I think about our undergrad curriculum, half of the credit are liberal arts, general education courses, which allow students to learn something different than their trade. And so that probably allow people to be more nimble and flexible in going from one occupation to another. But the advantage of the European model is it's very good to integrate migrants. So when you have migrants coming, maybe the parents, maybe they've already learned a trade in their home country, but the kids typically, and we know that migrants tend to have low income when they come in a country. That's true everywhere, by the way. So when you have migrants that come into the country, the kids can immediately get into a trade and have a good job, a good training, and get a good life. And very often they can create their own business, like a plumbing business, right? A plumber in Switzerland, if you own your your company as a plumber, you're doing quite well actually, even if you're first generation. Like
I would even say in the United States, as a plumber or HVAC tech or some, you can do quite well. And maybe actually, as you're saying that, and again, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but that whole apprenticeship route seems pretty amazing in Europe. But there's also you kind of, I would think maybe many people feel like they get stuck on a track and it's hard to jump and try something else. Whereas in the United States, okay, yeah, you can try all these other things, but I think we could use more of an apprenticeship track or a more robust one. Um, but I don't know. Again, I keep coming back to hospitality because anyone can kind of get into hospitality as a food server, a housekeeper, a line cook or whatever, and then you can quickly get onto a very steep career path. But I don't know if it's very, I don't know if there's like a lot of recruiting from high schools into there, but I feel like maybe there's some happy place between the two that we're still evolving towards.
I've been talking about that with many, companies, associations, and groups, and even the city in New York. I'm part of a group trying to connect high schools to the hospitality world. And what we have is the hospitality industry has a brand problem. It's a branding issue in terms of career pathways. Everybody thinks that you know you're in hospitality, you're never going to make a good salary. Well, that's not true. I mean, you can relatively quickly become the general manager of a limited service hotel and do okay. So I think we need to change the narrative. We need to change the narrative about the industry, and that's really what we've been trying to do with NYU. We have also, collaborations with Johnson and Wales. We run an event earlier this in March 1st, which was a celebration of Black leadership in hospitality. We had both business leaders, including Chip Wade from Union Square Hospitality Group, to celebrity chef Marcus Samuelsson was there, and we brought kids from the CIA, from Johnson and Wales, from Cornell, from NYU. We had high school kids who came to see that they have different pathway to be a leader, even for Black kids. And so we're going to do that for Black, brown, Latinos, white kids. It doesn't matter. We need to show that there are great ways in this industry to actually have a fun career and actually do quite well financially and pretty quickly. I had a bunch of former students that became general managers within 5 to 8 years after graduation.
I think what's also interesting is just seeing that really steep career path within a hotel. Um, if what you're saying with that University of Utah model is happening, I assume that is happening intentionally or just by happenstance in other universities around the country and world. But even if if you start in a hotel entry level and then you get on this steep career path, if all those other companies, like in 10 years, 20 years, or people that went through that University of Utah school or other places, and they see this importance of hospitality, those people who go from room attendant to room exec to assistant general manager, I bet you those other companies out there in other verticals will be like, oh, hospitality on their CV or resume. You know what? you want to get out, you've been in hotels long enough, you want to come in and work for us in XYZ company, you have the experience, come on in and teach us. I feel like it's a great breeding ground um, for other, I don't know, other careers as well.
And I've seen people. I had a gentleman called me a few weeks back, and he's actually running a building which has condos, like one of these huge skyscraper overlooking Central Park in New York, and he's running the hospitality operation there. And he was a GM before. So you can run, buildings, you can run office space, you can run hospitals. One of our former students was the chief hospitality officer for the hospital for special surgery. You have all of these spaces. I also remember 10 years ago, a former student give me a call and says, "Hey, he was the rooms division manager of the Ritz Carlton in Berlin." And he said, "I received a call from Apple Store and they want to hire me to become the area manager for all of the Apple stores." He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Remember, say yes more often than you say no," And so he did that. And I think now he's back as a GM somewhere else for a hotel.
And I bet he learned so much from that Apple experience of what he liked and didn't like, and now can bring it back to somewhere else. And I think that's true. Like the future is so unknown. And for me, I'm always a fan of saying yes because I love experience. And each yes offers the potential for a radically different experience.
Yeah. Well, yes. So you asked the question, the mistake in Switzerland.
Yeah, I was going to come back to that. Yeah. What was the mistake?
So I had a good job at the business school in Paris. I had a sabbatical year. I worked for a year as a kind of a consultant to Alain Ducasse, the celebrity chef. And after that, I had the choice. Either I could go back to the business school, and then I was approached by a French private equity who had just acquired 2 hotel schools in Switzerland, and they offered me the job of the chief academic officer for Les Roches in Switzerland. And at the time, I thought, my parents were getting older, getting back closer to family was probably a good idea. The pay was good. It was a very nice location, a big job title. And I said yes. And I moved there. And then after 6 months, the first 6 months were great. But then after that, it's a private equity. What did I think? I should have known better. My PhD is in finance. I know what a PE does. So what they did is they started to cut costs. And, in a school, it's easy. The economic model is relatively easy. Cutting costs is what? We have infrastructure. So they did sale and lease back of the buildings, which essentially puts the long-term future sustainability of the business at risk because, sale and lease back transaction puts you at risk on the long term. Second thing is you increase class size, more student per faculty, right? It's simple math. Is it good for the student? Not necessarily. And then you cut support staff. Why do you need an academic advisor? Well, to advise the student. Well, can an academic advisor advise twice more students? That's simple. So after 6 months of that craziness, I figured that the PE goals were not aligned with my goals in life. And so I quit. And luckily, a friend of mine had given my name to the search firm for the job I have now, and I was hired 3 months later. So that was the mistake. Misalignment of goals and values, I think, is the biggest mistake you can do in associating yourself with someone.
And I think that is actually a good transition into speaking about the NYU Lodging Conference, because again, you found yourself back in New York and you're in this place where your values are aligned with what you're doing. And when you can check all those boxes and create that alignment, it doesn't feel like you're working, right? You're living your passion. But you've been shepherding this NYU Lodging Conference for a few years that you've been at NYU, and it was just sold, right? And how is NYU, how has NYU looked at this NYU Lodging Conference as an incubator for ideas and a collision or a crucible for collisions amongst leaders in our industry? And even though it's sold it and it's transitioning into a new direction, how does NYU continue to benefit from that and vice versa?
The reason I decided to sell that conference was really to ensure its sustainability. Over the years, I realized that there were really two critical people in ensuring the success of the conference, and none of them was part of NYU, and the two of them were not getting any younger. So I thought about succession planning, and I realized that I had none realistic succession plan. And we as a school were not designed to host events of that size by ourselves. So I realized that in order to ensure the sustainability of the event, I had to find a partner. And the partner became Questrex. Questrex has a long track record of running successful conferences in different industries, but they also run the largest European conference, Hotel Investment Forum in Berlin, which I attended a couple of times, and it's a great event. And so we found that this was also a way to ensure, when I say the sustainability of the conference, you also have to realize that the conference generated significant profit that we were putting back into an endowment to provide scholarship to students. And so I wanted to ensure that, kind of profit would be sustainable in the long term. So the sale of the conference is not a simple transaction. There are multiple payments over multiple years that ensure that we keep growing our endowment. Questrex run the show. They are better at us in doing so. I continue to have significant input in the programming, in the branding, in the marketing. I talk every week with the head of Questrex just to ensure that we're aligned in terms of where the event goes. And we have a licensing agreement that runs over 20 years. And so the real reason is it's such an important event for our industry. That's really where a lot of businesses is done. That's where people come to listen to the top executive in the industry. I think it's the only conference in the world where you have all of the CEOs of the top 5, brands that are there on stage. And with that, we were able to also ensure the legacy of Jonathan Tisch and the legacy of Dorothy Jennings, who were the two people I said were so critical in ensuring the success of the event.
Wow. And so in a way, and in essence, it's not a traditional sale where it's sold and you walk away. There's an earn out, but a continued feedback loop that you've created between the university and this really important event that happens every single early June. I mean, it's always in my calendar, and I love it because I have so many clients and other industry leaders that are always in town either before or after, and obviously they're busy during that. But I get to see a lot of friends that come into town right around then. So I always try and not travel from New York City right around then as well.
Yeah, it's really a gathering. And I think in our discussion with our partner, it's you asked me where it's going. We're trying to improve the networking opportunities. We're trying to also ensure that we have relevant and new content that is presented. These are really the two goals: is improving networking opportunities and ensuring that we continue to have very relevant and new content. Because now, content, I mean, we all have access to, forecasts about interest rates. We all have access to forecasts about RevPAR, about inflation, about this kind of stuff. So we need to generate new novel content to ensure that whatever we put on stage is of value to the attendees and to the sponsors. And increasing the networking opportunities is really because of what you just said. So that's where you meet a lot of your friends, your clients, your partners. That's what we want to offer to the attendees.
And just so all the listeners know, the main center of gravity, or the rotational axis of this event, is the Marriott Marquis Times Square, correct? Um, and this is where most of the people I talk to are architects, designers, people involved in hospitality design. Um, but I've been very curious about, and also like kind of awestruck by this host hotels and resorts partnership with Marriott in that Marriott Transformational Capital Program. And they basically have taken, I don't know, 10 to 20 really key spaces, whether it's rooms or public areas that could use a big capital renovation. And it's really driven by, they're very metric based and it's very ROI generated. But that Marriott Marquis, the lobby area, has always been kind of a grand space. But as putting your NYU lodging conference hat on, how do you think that that lobby area that they did that huge renovation on has impacted NYU lodging from a before to after perspective?
The lobby is on the 8th floor, and it's always been a place where attendees and non-attendees would be able to meet and discuss. So we had a lot of people who would actually come to the Marriott Marquis without paying. So it's always been a little bit of a problem for us because we couldn't really manage that. But at the same time, it was great for people who couldn't afford, to pay for the conference, like more junior people. And I think so. I think with Questrex, we're trying to solve for that and ensure that it's a little bit more organized on that 8th floor, and that people can book places where they can meet with the people they really want, have a little more space, because at times it was really so crowded that, now the interesting thing that they've done is on the 9th floor, where they've added significant space. They used to have just like a bridge over the 8th floor lobby. Now they've extended significantly that space, which we're using for networking as a networking space. But the renovation of the hotel has been a long. I mean, it was really during COVID that they decided to push the button, and do the renovation. And I think they've done. I think they've done a great job. I think even the elevator system now works. They've changed it, and it's so important for them, that elevator system, and now it's working, I think, really beautifully. You never have to wait as much as you used to in the past. Kind of almost emotional, that hotel. I was talking to David Marriott, and he was telling me about his father bringing him there during the construction of that building, and so many stories around it. That the company Marriott at the time was the Host and Marriott were together, right? I mean, it was before the split. It was in the 70s, and Times Square was just full of prostitution and drugs, and that investment almost bankrupted the company. But Bill Marriott had that vision for Times Square becoming a tourism hub, which it is today. And he was telling David about all of the things, and the reason why they put the lobby on the 8th floor is because of safety and security concerns at the time. He was also telling me about taxi drivers. Taxi drivers would not come unless they were given a free lunch. So they had to give free lunch to the taxi drivers to come pick up the guests.
Oh my goodness.
That was how bad Times Square was at the time. And the other cool feature of that hotel, which I really love, is it's the only theater that actually has a Broadway address. Can you believe that? All of the other theaters don't have a Broadway address. They're all on, different streets.
Oh, wow. Although it is set a little bit, I mean, it's in the footprint. You enter through Broadway, but technically it's like, but it is pretty cool. What's playing there now? Is that where Wicked is? I always forget. There's something that's been there for really, oh no, the Lion King was there forever, I think. I don't know. As we kind of wrap, I was wondering, as a student and professor of hospitality, what is there a book or a framework or a human that had the largest impact on you as a expert and as a professor of hospitality?
Well, I think you named that book from Danny Myers, Setting the Table. I think that's certainly one of the most important one. Um, and then the other one, I mean, I have my mentor who unfortunately passed away a few years back, Michael Olson from Virginia Tech. He wrote a book on strategic management in hospitality industry, and his framework that he developed over the years is all about co-alignment and the co-alignment of things that industry do in relation to a changing world and a changing environment, and how you implement. And you talked about the culture and all of that. So his book is really talking about how companies are strive to maintain an alignment with a changing world. And I think companies like Marriott International has been Hilton's been extremely successful in the evolution of over the past few years. They've been trailblazers in many different ways. So these would be the two books I would recommend.
Okay, good. I've read one of them, but I'm going to check out Michael Olson. And then you went from Switzerland to Blacksburg.
Yes.
I mean, via Minneapolis, you drove down. And then was that your first time in the United States?
No, I did two things. I was an exchange student in San Francisco for a little while, and I was young. I was 17, I think, and then I went to do an internship, and I did an internship in Newport Beach at a hotel, and that was the nicest internship. And the guy who hired me was the director of food and beverage. I said, "Why did you hire me?" And he said, "Well, the only reason is because we have the same birthday." Well, I had another moments there. The general manager was French. He had a sports car, and one day he comes to me and says, "Hey, Nick, I need to go to LAX to negotiate. We had a contract with Air France for their crew, and it was a big contract. And he said, I need to renegotiate the contract for next year with Air France. I'd like you to come with me." And I was like, "Yes, finally, I'm recognized as a good negotiator." And so we get to LAX, and he said, "Oh, you can stay in the car." I said, "So why did you ask me to come?" He said, "Well, so that we can drive on the high occupancy lane."
Oh, save time. Oh, carpool. What? But you know what? That's by saying yes to things, right? You said yes to all this. And by putting yourself out there, you never know if someone's going to have the same birthday as you, or like the glasses you're wearing, or just want to get in the carpool lane to get there faster. No matter what, you got to spend 2 hours, or I don't know, 2 or 3 hours in the car with that person. And probably you weren't silent. You probably learned so much just driving back and forth with them.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, when we got back, he actually said, "Well, I'm going to ask you to, have a look at the numbers and tell me what you think." So I think the conversation was useful.
Yeah. Say yes to more. Okay. So now you've had this thing. Oh, before we get into my closing question, what did you ever go to a Virginia Tech football game? Because I hear that stadium, the electricity, and is just like nothing to be missed. It rivals. It's among the best football experiences. I don't know if you like football at all, but I hear it's one of the best sporting experiences in the United States, if not the world.
I've never been able to find a spot. I mean, it's crazy. You have like a 5-year waiting list for.
Oh, so you didn't even get to go to a game because it's so
I
hard to get to?
tailgated, but I could hear the crowd and
Oh,
but I always watch the games on TV.
oh, wow. Okay. Well, and again, I'm going to steal that use of the word pathway, or that metaphor pathway. Um, you've been on an incredible journey and path for your experience. As you kind of take stock and look back, and now this NYU Lodging Conference is on a new path. Education is innovating right now about all these different pathways for students and apprentices, and I don't know, there just seems to be like this exponential explosion of entry points into the hospitality industry. As you look back, and now as you look forward, what's exciting you most about what you see?
There's one thing that's always been exciting for me when you can positively impact someone else. And that's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing is I see so many of my former students, every type of students. I remember one from the University of Houston. University of Houston back then, was really for first college generation students. And I had a guy, I was teaching a financial management course, and I had a guy who was a veteran. He was in the military for many years, and he came to the school. They were able to have discounted tuition, and he was taking my class, and I was teaching them about investing in stocks and things. And so going through the mathematics of things. And I was trying to get him to do it on Excel, and he would never do it on Excel. He always asked me to do it on the calculator, and he was a pain in the neck. Fast forward 10 years later, that's right, 10 years later, he calls me in France. And I was like, how did you get my cell phone number? It's not out there. He said, well, I found it. And he said, well, I wanted to check with you. I think I need to go and do a master in economics. And I say, why? He said, well, I've been investing a little bit since I graduated, and I've made a few millions. I said, what? And he said, and I just want to make sure I really understand what I'm doing, and I don't think I have the foundation in macroeconomics. I was like, okay, well, if you've made a few millions in 10 years, maybe you don't need to go back to school. But anyway, so having an impact on people, making them better financially, making them better as better persons, that's what excites me most. And I think going forward, I think we'll have even more opportunities to do that. And I think as we look at the world around us, it's complicated. A lot of things are very complicated. It's a reordering of the world at the moment, and there's a lot of tension, a lot of fears. So anytime we can positively impact someone, I think we should do it. And that's really what excites me, is if I can make someone feel and be better in the future, it will continue to excite me.
Yeah. And that resonates with me so deeply, because I think that's the most rewarding channel of feedback I get from doing this podcast. Like, I just do this for 2 or 3 hours a week. But by putting it out there and talking to great people like yourself, there's so many people who are either students or interns or just starting their career path, and even some who are long, like 20 years in or 15 years in, they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And it impacts them in such a positive, and like, well, not necessarily positive. It's just kind of, it's like a redirecting impact. And it's like, hey, they'll call me or email me and say, oh, I love that person. Can you put me in touch? Because I was considering changing to XYZ. And for me to be able to have that kind of impact and shorten their journey, it lights me up so much. And again, it's like, it's always being in these positions where you can say yes to as many things as possible. And you know what? Oftentimes you get no said, and no is okay too, right? Because no is just a piece of information. This has been really fantastic, Nick. I thank you so much. If people wanted to learn more about you, NYU, TAMS, or NYU Lodging Conference, what's the best way for them to get in touch or learn more?
They can check me out on LinkedIn. It's Nicolas Graf. I think it's easy. I'm easy to find as a profile, and they can email me too. And it's an easy email. It's ng67@nyu.edu.
Perfect. Well, I thank you. A heartfelt thank you for being here with me, and I look forward to working with you on radical innovation and getting to know you better. And hopefully I'll get to see you in early June down in New York. So thank you for sharing your story with all of our listeners and watchers.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure. Dan, thank you for inviting me.
And you're most welcome. And a heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners and watchers. And I wouldn't be here talking to amazing people like Nicolas and hearing about his journey through our awesome industry without you and your positive feedback and encouragement. And if you think that someone could benefit from listening to this, please send the link to them. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that good stuff. I appreciate you all very, very much, and we'll catch you next time.